Okay, so this marks part 2 of the Vortec Wrangler swap conversion. What I'm up to at the moment, the task on hand, is going to be pulling the fenders off. I need to pull these AC lines out. I don't know if you've never worked on AC systems, like I've replaced quite a few AC systems, and they have a funky little retaining ring that goes in there. You know what, I probably have a new one. Excuse my messy garage. Yeah, okay. So it's a ring that kind of looks like that. It's just a metal, it's like a spring, but you have to have a tool that would be able to slip in like inside of it to expand it, and then you can pull the hose off. And I used to have a set of those tools, but I haven't been able to find them. I'm gonna see if I can maybe get away with using like a hose clamp or something to wedge in between it. On the fender, I figured I would just show you where all the bolt locations are, in case you ever need to pull a TJ fender. It's actually, at first when I was looking at it, I was like, oh man, that looks like a pain, but it's actually really easy. What you have is just all these along the inside. They're all a 13 mil. Then on down here, there was 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Those bolt to this thing, and then there's one, I guess one here and one here that I removed that was not necessary, because you can see this thing can stay here unless you want to pull this thing out, but I don't think I have a reason to. And so literally just that, and then obviously detach your front grille if that's not already done, and then you can pull it right out. Boom. Something that saves an incredible amount of time when getting to bolts like these fender bolts, where you only have, you know, a few degrees here to ratchet. I'd very highly recommend getting a ratcheting or an electric ratchet. I mean, you don't have to get one that's expensive. I know Makita makes a good tool, or Milwaukee makes good ratcheting wrenches, electric ones. I'm definitely doing anything like valve cover bolts on a Subaru, timing components, this kind of stuff. This tool saves so much time. Alright, so I've made some progress here. I've got, as you can see, both the fenders off. It's kind of cool looking at it with no fenders and like just frame and suspension. So that'll definitely make it a lot easier to locate things and measure things and fit things in. I got this side of the engine mount cut down. It's not flush with the frame, but I rounded everything off so it's all smooth. And then I'll hit most of this with some fresh black paint, just because it's not really rusty at all. It's just like some of these pieces that I want to be nice and clean and black. Yeah, with my AC lines here, I ended up using this green piece here is just like a piece of stiff plastic, and I cut it down to a size where I could throw a hose clamp on it, push it up against the spring, and then both the AC lines just popped off. So that was a nice little trick. Makes it nice and easy. Alright, so continuing on part 2 of my Vortec Wrangler swap. Still no parts here, obviously. I got a couple weeks before my engine and transmission comes in, but what I'm up to at the moment, I have resprayed the frame and some steering parts just with some black spray paint after cleaning everything up really well. One thing that I have to get done today is I'm replacing this steering cardan joint. There's a little bit of slop in it, and I've replaced that one earlier, like a couple months ago. And just while I have everything out, I already have the part, so I'm just gonna throw that in there. Another thing that I have going on today is I need to drain oil, drain my transfer case oil, because I'm gonna be splitting everything apart. Let's see how nasty this oil is, see if we get any. You know what, I wanna grab a magnet. I know I have a magnet around here somewhere. I want to grab a magnet and see if I get any metal chunks coming out. Definitely some metal flakes on there. I know, I mean, I have, you can see right there's a big chunk of piston missing, so I've only found little bits of pieces of piston ring. There's obviously a lot more metal floating around somewhere. Brand new transfer case fluid. Nice and clean. Right when I bought my Jeep, the first thing I did was change the diff fluids, transfer case fluid, transmission fluid, engine oil obviously. Okay, so I just slid my axle out, and it's a good thing I decided to do that U-joint, because on the end of my axle, where this is the side that, you know, slides into the front differential, I had all of this mud all caked in here. Okay, so looking at my diff after I got the cover off, all the fluid that came out, it actually didn't look too bad. There was just like a tiny bit of discoloration in there. So I'm on my way to my local parts store right now just to grab some gear oil, some RTV, and some razor blades, some brake clean, just to be able to knock that out really quick, clean it up, and throw the cover back on, fill it back up with fluid. Then I can just finish replacing that car down joint and get the axle popped back in. Whenever you're putting money into a vehicle like this or doing a conversion, and it's not just like a cheap, maybe like a drift project or something like that, but something that you're planning on daily driving and care about, you want to put your money in the right parts, and it's always good to have peace of mind for digging a little bit further just to make sure everything's well sorted. Because if I had just ignored what I saw on that axle and finished fixing that cardan joint and throw it back together, a couple miles down the road my front diff is gonna be making all sorts of noise and need a lot more attention than just cleaning and servicing it. It's gonna need some substantial repair. So I'll finish cleaning this, get the cover cleaned up, and the gasket maker that I like to use, I really like to use the right stuff. This is what I had the shop that I worked at. All the techs, we were like, hey, order a bunch of this stuff for us because this is the good stuff. So works great for seals like this. One thing that is nice about the right stuff versus just like ultra gray is that this stuff, as soon as you put the cover on and tighten the bolts, you don't have to wait for it to clear. You can just dump, like if it was an oil pan, you wouldn't recommend doing this, but you could literally seal it up, bolt it up, put oil in it and run it, and it's not going to leak. Versus like ultra gray or something, technically what they have you do is put the gasket on, let it cure a certain amount, and then put the bolts on it and then torque it. So this is just a quicker process, and in my opinion, in my experience, this stuff holds up and seals better. I mean, go with whatever product you want. I'm sure any of them will do the job just fine. This is just what I'm using. Okay, so now I'm at a point where I'm happy with how clean everything is. It's not perfect, but it's for sure gonna seal well. I use a razor blade, and then I go in with a little bit of emery cloth. This stuff works incredibly well for gaskets. You just don't want bits of this flaking around in your gears or in your engine or something like that. So whenever you're scraping the outside, always, you know, shove rags and stuff over the gears, and then one final clean before you put the gasket sealer on. I always just do one final clean and wipe it down with a clean rag. So I'm going to go ahead and put my gasket sealer on. I've seen lots of people do it different ways. Some people will just put it on thick and literally just spread it all out evenly. Some people are really meticulous and just do a single bead that looks really nice. I like to try to do the bead until I mess up, and then I end up smearing it. So we'll see how it goes this time, but pretty much just gonna put some sealant on it, put the cover on, and then throw the oil in. Okay, so I definitely ended up going with the kind of the smear method, but I have my silicone all around the edge there, not too far in to where it's gonna get out, like excess is gonna go into the gears. So I'm just gonna slap it on, put the bolts in. One thing that, like, when I was like kind of first starting out, pretty much anything that I put back together that had seals, I'd always look up the torque spec for it and then take the time to set the torque wrench and then do it. And then once I brought that into like a professional shop, people were looking at me like, what the hell are you doing? You don't have time to set a torque wrench and to do that for a diff cover. You put the bolts in and you snug them up. So that's kind of my method of going for things now. Although when I'm doing stuff at home, I kind of have more time and I have time to be more meticulous and get everything zoned in. But with a diff cover like this, a front diff, with this really generous silicone, you can kind of just slap it on there. As long as you kind of have knowledge of where that torque should be, you don't have to stress about, oh, maybe I didn't quite get it to the correct foot-pound or something. Diff covers like this, or it's a little bit more generous if you have a good feel of those kind of things. Obviously, whenever you put something like this on, you kind of want to go in a star pattern. You don't want to torque one side and then the other, but I just got it popped on there, and that's kind of what you want to see, is just a nice little seam all the way around coming up. That's how you know it's getting a good seal. See if I can kind of show you that. So all the way around you have this nice bead of silicone, and then I usually kind of scrape off the excess. So once I get it all bolted down, I'll make it look neater, but pretty easy to do, nothing difficult here. Just takes a little time, and then we can finish getting that joint replaced. Okay, so I got the diff cover all tightened down. Once I zap them down with my gun, I go in and, feel them by hand and torque them all down. And so since this is a cover that I don't know, I guess technically you would call this like non-serviceable. There's only a fill plug, not a drain plug. So to drain it, you take the cover off. And then when you're filling it back up, you fill it up just till it starts to come out of the fill hole. And that's how you know the level is full, which you can see is kind of like right at the bottom of the axle, where the axle comes in. So that's just like a 3/8 drive to take that off. Usually you kind of want like an extension on there, but I think this will work. That's kind of an awkward angle. Yep, I need 2 hands for this. So, goodbye. Okay, so to fill this thing up, I just grabbed a little scrap of fuel line that I had here, and I'm going to shove that in the fill, hold my bottle up, and then poke just a hole on the top so air can escape. So I poked a hole there so air can get in, and then I can just drain this bottle in. And like in a professional shop, why I said that would be serviceable cover is because normally you have a drain plug where you can just drain all the fluid out and you don't have to remove the cover. But in this case, what you would use is a driveline machine that has like a little hose, kind of like this, but it'd be smaller and plastic and a little more flexible. And you can actually put the hose down in there and suck all of the fluid out and then just pump new fluid in. And that's how you would do a differential service in a proper shop with the equipment for it. Which is a whole lot easier than taking the cover off and stuff. But taking the cover off gives you the added advantage of being able to inspect the gears and see what kind of condition they're in. So this will work just fine. And once fluid starts to drip out of the fill hole, that is when it's all full. So soon enough, this will be done, and then I can finish changing that joint. And that is all it takes to service a differential. Pretty simple, pretty easy. Just takes a little bit of time, takes the right equipment, and now I'm moving on to knock this joint out. These things are a little bit of a pain, and this one actually is in worse condition than I thought it was, because it wasn't like giving me any trouble or really making any noise at all, but I can't really get you a great angle. But once I take this off, you'll see the roller bearings, and I bet you they will be nasty and rusty, and I'll compare it with the new one, and you'll be able to see how much this needed to be replaced. So that up next in the rest of part 2. Okay, so what this tells me from looking at, you know, you have four trunnions on this cardan joint, or U-joint, or, but from my knowledge and from my experience, cardan joint and a U-joint are the same thing. Anyways, what the trunnions on this tell me are that I had one side that was good and healthy and lubricated. This side is completely bone dry and rusted, and the rollers that fell out of it are also bone dry and broken up, because once it's rusted like that, they're not going to roll smoothly. They're going to break up and cause problems, and that's where the slack comes from, because not everything is nice and tight. This side is total chaos. Just it needs a new joint very badly, and so it's a good thing that I'm doing this. It's easy to see how much easier it would be doing this with a vise, and they make proper tools, like you have ball joint pullers, you have stuff like that where you can more precisely and slowly apply pressure and pop them out nicely. Obviously, doing this with sockets on the ground, you guys saw how much I have to reset it, reposition it, but it gets the job done if you don't have like a shop and the right equipment. You can do this in your driveway. It's kind of a pain. It just takes patience and taking the time to do it right. Because setting them back up, one of the biggest issues is all those roller bearings that are stacked up. One of them or two of them will fall out of place, fall flat. And then you have to take it apart, use a little pick, get the needle roller back up into position, and then start again. So it's one of those jobs that takes patience and time to do it right. Okay, so got the maintenance side of things knocked out. Got that new joint in there installed. Got my diff all cleaned out and refilled with the right fluid and the proper amount. Everything is as it should be. Really, I mean, anytime you're upgrading like an engine in a vehicle, just think of how much more everything else needs to be upgraded. Like, I'm not going to be able to do like serious off-roading with these axles, and with this size of tire, there's no way. I'd be breaking stuff left and right. I'm gonna have to take it really easy for a while. With an engine this you know, just that much torque going through everything means everything has to be that much stronger. My plan is for this to be my daily driven vehicle, as it was before my engine gave out, and so that means I need reliable power, and that I surely will have with my new engine. I'm just not going to be, you know, doing like going straight into mud puddles or trying to climb up stuff for a little bit. I have budgeted so that I can afford to do this swap, have it running reliably. You know, in city use and stuff and light off-road, it'll be just fine. But if I was to tow something or something of that nature that would put a lot of load on the rest of the chassis, the drivetrain, bad things would happen. It was delivered just earlier today. They threw the little company sticker on the oil filler cap. I think that looks kind of cool.